In this video, we're going to be connecting linear representations. So note that the general template for a linear equation looks like this: y equals mx plus b, where m is going to be our slope, and that can be written as the change in y over the change in x. And we know that the b value represents our y-intercept. Knowing these three different elements of a linear representations, the change in y, the change in x, and the y-intercept, we'll be able to connect one representation to the next. So taking a look at our first example, I'm going to be starting off with a graph and filling out the other two representations. So in my graph, I know that the y-intercept, the point where the graph crosses the y-axis, is going to be right here at the point 0, 1. That means the starting point in my table is going to be 0, 1, and my b value is going to be 1. All of these y-intercepts are connected. Now let's find my change in y. For one point to the next, I know I have to rise up 3 units. So my change in y is going to be plus 3. And the top half of my slope is going to be 3. All of these changes in y's are connected. And finally, let's find my change in x. To find my run, I need to move to the right 2 spaces. So my change in x is going to be plus 2. And the bottom of my slope is going to be 2. All of these change in x's are connected. Here in our second example, this time we'll be starting off with a table and filling out the other two representations. So I know that the start of my table is going to be 0, 6, and that tells me that the y-intercept in my graph is going to be 0, 6. All right, and I know that the b value is also going to be 6. Now let's find my change in y. From 6 down to 4 down to 2, I know that I'm subtracting 2, so that my rise is going to be moving down 2, and the top of my slope is going to be minus 2. And finally, let's find my change in x. From 0 to 5 to 10 to 15, I'm adding 5. So the run on my graph is going to be right 5. And the bottom of my slope is going to be 5. And finally, to complete my graph, I need to connect these 2 points. Right, my graph is going to look like that. Finally, for our last example, I'm going to be starting off with the equation and filling out the other two representations. So I know that my b value in my equation is going to be minus 3, which tells me the starting point in my table is minus 3, and the y-intercept in my graph is going to be minus 3. Now I know that the top of my slope is going to be 4, so my change in y is going to be plus 4, and the rise is going to be up 4. And finally, I know that the bottom of my slope is going to be 1, so my change in x is going to be plus 1, and the run on my graph is going to be moving to the right 1. And to finally fill out my graph, I need to connect these two points. So my graph is going to look like this. Okay. So knowing the change in y, the change in x, and the y-intercept, I'm able to connect the graph to the table to the equation.